Okay, everyone, welcome back. It's Mr. Allen. I'm about to go through creating a residual plot in Excel. So I'm starting here with some data, and I'm basically going to highlight that data and create a scatter plot of this data before I can get to the residual information. I've got insert here. I'm going to insert a scatter plot, and the regular scatter plot's probably the best here. Now, anytime I'm doing any kind of a chart, I probably want to make sure that I have decent titles throughout the various parts of it. I guess actually first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this label, just I think it's kind of extraneous. So I've clicked on my chart here and my chart tools. Let's see what I just do. There we go. Click on the chart. I've got design, and the layout option here allows me to change sort of the appearance of my chart. My chart title is already there. My axes titles, I'm going to change my primary horizontal axis title to be below, and this was just years, or year probably is more appropriate. And then my axis title for my vertical axes, I'm going to choose the rotated title, although you can choose what you'd like there. And this is the relative tuition cost. Not that it really matters, but basically this is information that I pulled out of a textbook. It compares relative tuition cost from the year 1992 to the years from 75 through 2000. So for every $100 spent in 1992, about $31 was spent in 1977 to get the same education. And this is probably not a great title, just relative costs. So relative tuition cost versus 1992, something along those lines. Appropriate titles is all I'm really interested in. Now, the main idea of this video was to show how to deal with or how to get to residuals. So I'm going to select this data. And the first thing I'll need to do is get a trend line. So I'm going to, select and right click and choose Add Trend Line. I'm going to start with a linear trend line, and if that doesn't work out, I'll have to figure something else out later. And I want to display the equation down here and display the R-squared value on the chart as well. And then basically I can move things around a little bit. If I click on the interior section of my chart here, I can resize it. If I grab the edge of the chart, I resize the entire chart. So if I'm looking for somewhere to put the equation so I can clearly see it, I want to make sure that I kind of move this stuff a little bit out of the way, resize it as I need to, and now my equation and my R-squared value show up. So if we understand R-squared value, we can probably see already that that's not a great R-squared value. It's below 90%. We can also see from the trend line on the graph that the trend line doesn't seem to fit the graph very well. But I'm not going to be concerned about that right now because I want to go through the process of creating the residual graph and see what happens with the residuals. So assuming I missed all that, what do I do next? Well, I'm going to use my equation here to get predicted values. So basically establish what does this trend line predict given the information that we started with. And the equation, let's see if I can zoom here a little bit. So the equation is 6.516, 6.585. I'm going to multiply that. The multiplication symbol, in case you didn't see it, is or can't see it, is the asterisk. I'm going to multiply it by this value over here. And then I'm going to subtract the 12,867 from this equation over here. And in case you didn't see it, there is an equal sign at the start of my equation. Basically, every spreadsheet I've ever seen requires an equal sign when you're doing calculations. So it's just sort of the way the spreadsheet understands that you're not trying to type that number in or that series of values in. you want to actually have it do an equation. So after I've typed the equation one time, I can move my mouse to the corner here of the cell and then basically drag that value down, or drag that cell down to all the subsequent cells. What you'll notice, or if you can see it, what happens is the equation is adjusted to make sure that it's referencing the cell in column A that is at the same row level as the current cell. So it sort of fixes all the calculations for you. The other possibility, of course, is just put yourself on the first cell, copy, and then holding my shift keys I can highlight, or using my mouse I can highlight the cells to which I want to copy, and then just paste in there. Two different ways to get that information from one cell to all the other cells. So my residuals, the residuals are I guess I should let's make these a little bit bigger too. My residual values are calculated by subtracting my predicted value minus my relative value, or sorry, my original value, the relative cost in this case. And again, as I did last time, I'm just going to take that corner, drag it down so that all these are calculated for me. Now, last thing, to do the residual plot, I'm basically interested in comparing the years to the residual values. I'm going to highlight down this column and then hold my control key, not zoom though, hold my control key and select the residuals column. And then when I go to create my scatter plot, it will be just those two columns that are included. If you have trouble with that, you could recopy the two columns side by side, kind of make a fourth or a fifth and sixth column, and then use those as well if that's easier. So now I'm going to insert again a scatter plot, and this scatter plot will be the residuals. Let's say residuals for tuition comparison. As I did last time, I'm going to add in axis titles, which is just going to be my year down here. And it doesn't really matter. This is, I sort of said it's the residual graph. So these are the residuals on the y-axis. So now looking at this graph, what we see is there seems to be a very obvious U-shaped or inverted U-shaped pattern here to my residual graph. If the linear model that I chose had been a good one, my residuals should be fairly small and should be fairly random as well. There shouldn't be an obvious pattern there. So the suggestion here by looking at this is that there's going to be a better model than the linear model I chose. And you'll be doing that kind of for the assignment today. So looking at my model from the start, I could see fairly clearly that the line didn't fit very well. I could see that the r-squared value didn't really imply that it was going to fit very well as well. This should be much closer to 1 if the line's fitting the data very well. And then from the residuals, again, I should have a fairly random pattern here, assuming the linear model worked well. But that wasn't the purpose of going through the video. The purpose of the video was to find out how to do all the different steps so that you can now do it yourself.